Identifying.
Let's go.
You are about to experience the uncensored conversations, stimulating wit, and the thought-provoking wisdom. Bold, raw, and uncut. Right now, on the LANCESCURV Show.
Black women and girls are missing, and no one seems to care. It's been about a week since Twitter user @BlackMarvelGirl set the internet on fire, garnering 35,000 retweets in less than 12 hours about 8 teenage girls who went missing in the Washington, D.C. area. Several media outlets, including Essence and Teen Vogue, began to write about the topic, discovering that in January, there were as many as 15 open cases of missing Black and Latina girls in the D.C. area, getting a little more than local media coverage and some tweets from the police department. Although this number is alarming, it speaks to a much larger issue going on in our country that is failing to make top story or evening news programs. Black women and girls are missing, and no one is doing anything about it. In July of 2014, it was reported that more than 64,000 Black women were missing in the United States. Although all of the women missing can't be attributed to foul play, the lack of media exposure when discussing disappearances of Black and brown people is shameful. It was the late great journalist Gwen Ifill who first coined the phrase missing white woman syndrome. Simply put, it is a term coined by social scientists to describe the extensive media coverage, especially in television, of missing person cases that involve young, white, upper middle class women or girls. Sociologists define the phenomenon as an undue focus on young white women who disappear, with the disproportionate degree of media coverage they receive being compared to cases concerning missing women of other ethnicities, socioeconomic classes, or with missing males. When we look at the overall picture of the missing, Black people account for nearly 40%, while only making up 13% of the total population. The media coverage on the missing, however, is quite the opposite. The press is 4 more times more likely to report when a white person goes missing versus someone who is Black or brown. These numbers are even more dire when the missing is a Black woman. It is easy to name the stories of Natalie Holloway, Elizabeth Smart, John Bennett Ramsey, and countless other white women and girls who went missing, taking over international headlines, causing white communities to assemble search teams and raise money as they looked for their loved ones. Yet the missing Black and brown women seemingly get lost as a quick segment on the local news with few gathering for community vigils. Sadly, their stories quickly become yesterday's tragedy. Relisha Rudd comes to mind when thinking about the disparity in coverage of the missing Black women and girls. The only major outlet for many months willing to cover the story was the Washington Post, in addition to several other Black media outlets. Even as the story grew, major networks failed to cover the story in comparison to the disappearances of white girls. To date, Relisha's body has never been found, and although D.C. police decided to reopen the search in April of 2016, it looks as though Relisha will become another memory of the past. Relisha Rudd's story is the perfect example of how the lack of media coverage is not by chance as much as it seems to be by design. The way the media chooses to handle missing persons cases dealing with minorities directly correlates with the way that the police investigate them. How often do you see an Amber Alert when the child is Black or brown versus when the child is white? Social workers in Relisha's case excused her over 30 days of absences by a Dr. Tatum without ever following up on if he was an actual doctor. Dr. Tatum was really a man named Khalil Tatum, who police determined was her actual captor. The lack of follow-up and follow-through on those whose jobs it is to protect and serve the minority often lets us slip through the cracks, labeling black children as runaways or truants instead of captives. When a child is listed as a runaway, they are not provided the same attention as one listed as being kidnapped or missing. This in turn stops the media from treating it as such, leaving the families of the missing little support to find their loved ones. Furthermore, this inaction by police makes black and brown women easy targets for human sex trafficking, which correlates with the statistics showing that 40.4% of victims are black women in comparison to white women, which are 26%. We often see people saying all lives matter, yet are silent when the lives of black and brown people are the main concern. America has a history of anti-black systems and institutions, and the media has been no different in the telling of our stories, especially around those who are missing. It is now that we must, as a community, come together as we have countless times before and be a voice for the missing. The stories of Renisha McBride, Corrine Gaines, and Sandra Bland could have also stayed local news if the power of black Twitter had not made them national topics of concern. It is time for us now to show up and search for our missing the way that we protest against police brutality. Without those series of tweets from @Black Marvel Girl, this story may not have ever seen the attention that it is currently getting. Even still, with so many now starting to get involved in coverage and attention, the majority of the outlets reporting these cases are those with a predominantly African American audience and has yet to get the attention of major network news. As of today, another 2 black girls have gone missing in the D.C. area with, not surprisingly, little coverage outside the local news. We can no longer sit silent while our people continue to go missing. It is time to speak up, get out, and find our missing girls. George M. Johnson is a journalist and activist based in the Washington, D.C. area, has written for Ebony.com, The Griot, JetPride.com, TheBody.com, and the Huffington Post on the topics of health, race, gender, sex, and education. Follow him on Twitter @IamJM Johnson. There was an article on The Griot. I'm not that brilliant, y'all, but I had to read it. I didn't want to talk about a celebrity tonight. I didn't want to talk about a coon tonight. I didn't want to talk about any of the other distractions that happen out there. This is very important that we tithe our time in cyberspace. And I don't mean just 1/10. It should be the majority of what we do. We have to gain awareness on different issues. We need to use this for that purpose. That was a long article somewhat. I'm not going to keep this too long, but I wanted to share that and read it out. That way you don't have to pick it up and read it yourself. But one thing I think we should do in our own communities, we have to look out for each other, right? And we say that and it's easier said than done. But as nosy as we have people in our own community, how is it that across the country, 64,000 people, women and girls, 64,000 women and girls are missing? 64,000. Now, you do the math. I'm not near a calculator right now, and it's the wee hours, and I'm not thinking too much or too hard. But divide 64,000 into the 50 states, right? Now, understand that whatever number you come up with is going to be really monumental. It's going to be crazy. But understand the bulk of that number is not going to be in Alaska. The bulk of that number is not going to be in Hawaii. is going to be in the continental United States. The bulk of that number is not going to be in Montana. The bulk of that number is not going to be in Idaho because there are not too many of us in those areas, although we are everywhere. So I'm thinking major cities, places where there's a higher population of us. There's got to be a lot of those who are missing in Atlanta. And of course, DC. Of course, Miami possibly. Dallas, Houston, LA, New York, Philadelphia. You know, I mean, come on now. So I do believe, it's my theory, and I haven't looked at any chart. I'm going by this, but common sense tells me that probably within the bigger cities, in the more populated areas, and the areas that have us, I mean, it could be down in South Carolina in a smaller place, right? Because we're there too. And I'm quite sure it would still shock us where we've gone missing. Hey, Seattle, Washington, why not? We're up there too. So we need to use our eyes whenever we see people with children and the child doesn't look too happy, or they may be struggling, or they may show fear. What about the case there? I think it was in Cleveland, Ohio, where you had the 4 young ladies kidnapped for 10 years, was it? 10 or 20 years? 10 years, right? This is more common. I believe it's more common than we could ever imagine. And because they are young black women, whether they're young or older, but to be snatched up, they don't get the media attention. Black women are devalued. Their lives are devalued. We're so quick to call each other bitches and whores, and you know, we don't see the sanctity in our women. And this is what I'm going to say, and a lot of folks are not going to like it, because I've had a few comments of people saying, well, you defend the black woman, you shouldn't defend the black woman. I know we have some sisters out here who have earned their hoochie degrees, but God did not create a hoochie. God did not create a whore, a slut. Yeah, we can use these names, and even they can use those names on each other. But it doesn't mean that the gift of life they don't deserve. It doesn't mean that. Because what would Malcolm X be if he didn't come through what he came through to eventually develop into the man that he became? What if his life was cut short as a person who sold drugs and did home invasions and robberies, right? And theft, rather. How would we remember him? There's so much bombarding the minds of our young black women. And without the father, and without that community around them, because we have neighborhoods, we don't have community anymore for the most part. What are they going to gravitate to? So when we see a situation like that, we've got to understand that we've dropped the ball. Even if well, I ain't got no kids. I did my part. We'll do more. We'll do more. We're faced with extinction now. And our women are being taken off. We know the brothers are being shot down and marginalized and kept out of jobs and different opportunities. And many of them have fallen victim to these different influences that are out here put on us. And now it's self-fulfilling prophecy, someone else's prophecy, but we're fulfilling it. The projection of what they want us to be, and we're living it out. We understand that with the men. But our women also now. Always, right?